My name is Brian Mitsoda. I'm the narrative lead on Bloodlines 2 from Hardsuit Labs.
I'm Cara, Ellison. I am the senior narrative designer on Bloodlines 2.
The reason for the delay was there were quite a few reasons. I think a lot of it was, one, we want to make sure that we, make the best game possible and polish the game. One thing what we kind of were looking at where we were at, and we're like, well, we can get the game out on time, but it's going to mean maybe scaling back some things, cutting some things, reducing, the quality of a few things. And I think overall people don't. People notice the fan expectations and the amount of people that were interested in the sequel, and we're like, well, we have to aim higher. We have to get this polished to a much better level than it is, and we definitely don't want to cut any content. So it was, there's that, but I think mostly it's that everyone wants to make on the publisher and Hardsuit side wants to make the best Bloodlines 2 possible.
And also we kind of know about the legacy of the first game, and it came out a little bit too early and it needed more time on Bloodlines 1, so we're very aware of the fact that we can very easily avoid those mistakes. So again, we're just trying to take more time to make the best game.
So as far as the story goes, a lot of that is already implemented, and it's we've gone to several recording sessions. That means a lot of the dialogue is done and implemented, and a lot of what is going on right now is iteration on combat and animation and the hubs and the feeling of the world, the world feeling alive. A lot of that is like the little things that kind of make a game from a prototype state, or like a kind of like, yeah, it works technically state, to a feeling like a really fully fleshed out game.
We also we're doing a lot to sort of build the hub system as well, so that there's a little bit more little micro stories that are happening all the way through the hubs, and so we're developing that now, and doing a lot of writing on that side, and it's really interesting to make the smaller stories happen. So I'm really excited to see how those turned out.
In general, we try to make dialogue meaningful, and that your choices actually matter. It could, depending on your choices, depending on your skills, dialogue could open up new ways to complete a quest. It could definitely, the things that you do or say to people could have an impact on how they view you. There's definitely different story paths to go down. There's a lot of different things, down to your background, to your thin blood discipline, to your clan choice, to your faction choice, that all those things kind of lead to different choices that you can make in the story.
And also there's the Malkavian playthrough, which is an entirely different layer on top of all of those things that Brian just mentioned. If you choose to play as a Malkavian, then you'll get an entirely different set of flavor on your playthrough. So we have like many different ways and layers of writing in the game, and a lot of the dialogue is responsive to your choices and decisions you made in the character creation screen. So there's lots of different ways in which you could replay the game.
Heightened senses mode that you go into is something where you're kind of using your vampire abilities to see or smell things that normal humans would not notice. And so one of those things, one of the big things about V5 and our game is the resonance system, where it's essentially, if you think about resonance as the emotional state of a human being, vampires kind of don't really feel emotion the same way, or emotion at all. And so they kind of get a rush of emotions when they feed on someone who's at a very heightened emotional state, and that kind of rush translates over time into things called clots. And so you can think about the resonance, and the reason you're hunting for people with high resonance is to get these clots, to get resonance, to get these clots to power your secondary abilities, the merits in the game. You mostly are looking for people who are, it's not just an instantaneous thing, it's more like what is their overall emotion? What are they saturated in over the day or weeks or months or whatever? What is their base emotion? And it's kind of like if you're looking for people who have just had like this buildup of emotion in them. But mostly you are looking for people like, for example, if you're going to see people who are, together making out or something, then obviously they're going to be in a heightened desire sense, desire resonance for them, so that they're essentially they are in that state when you get to them. So you're going to take advantage of that as a vampire.
But also you can use it as a contextual cue for the kind of environment you're in. So if you go into an abandoned building, for example, and you can see with your heightened senses there are a lot of people with delirium around, it might be a place where drug deals are going down. And therefore, you can maybe go in there and steal some drugs and make some money from that. So it's actually a way of like looking at the context for a situation and then figuring out from there what you want to do about it.
Yeah, so if you think about Masquerade as something that is like, it affects the city, humanity is kind of something that affects you personally, and it's basically your measure of how much you're giving into being a monster. And sometimes that'll have an impact on the flavor of dialogue or the kinds of dialogue choices that you might pop up. And that will also have an effect on things like frenzying in the game, so how much your inner beast and your inner hunger is having an effect on maybe how much you feed, or how often you have to feed, or before you're into a your inner beast takes control and kind of has to force you to feed. I think we're looking at about 20 to 30 hours for first playthrough, although given that somebody could go and look at every single thing we have in the game, it might be a little bit more than that, or they might do every side quest, or they might spend a lot of time hunting to get as much resonance as they can. So it's hard to say exactly how much there's going to be, but as far as like the narrative goes, there's definitely a lot of replay value from all the choices that I mentioned earlier, to running it for a different faction, and there are different endings and outcomes for different quests. So ultimately, like, there's a lot of different things that you're not going to see on one run through the game. So once you pick a Thin Blood discipline, you have it for the entire game, and once you pick a clan, you have your clan disciplines for the entire game. I think for the most part, yeah. I mean, you're gonna have abilities that, for example, the player that has something like mentalism, they might be able to get in a door and open up a path that someone else can't get through because they don't have that ability. So yeah, there are parts of the levels where you might be going through the level in a different way than someone who had chosen Chiropteran, for example. It won't affect things like story. We don't want to cut off content, although there is content that is unique to different backgrounds and unique to clan choices. Yeah, I mean, I personally play the controller.
I am a PC gamer. I prefer a keyboard, but that's just me.
Got big PC experience.
No, certainly not.
Would this support mods?
Yes.
Yes.
Any chance of this coming out on the Nintendo Switch?
I don't know.
I am not part of that decision-making process.
No idea.
But probably someone at Paradox could answer that.
Okay.
Actually, earlier we were joking about this game. All you do as a vampire is generally make other people's lives more terrible, and it could really be likened to a horrible goose that goes around pestering people and making their lives a nightmare, but just in a kind of darker form, I think. So yeah, I kind of hope that in some way we can get a crossover happening for the Goose game.